Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Transit Tangents. You might notice that we are not sitting on the couch at Chris's house anymore. This is our first virtual episode, and we are excited to have our guest today, Noah from the YouTube channel Streetcraft. First off, Noah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I accidentally stumbled across your YouTube channel initially, like a lot of folks apparently, some point, I think it was in January, and I saw you had the first two videos posted, and I sat there and I watched both of them from start to end, back to back. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you started Streetcraft earlier this year or sometime in that time frame. I'm curious what your kind of goal or vision for the content you're creating kind of is.
Yeah, so I started it back in January, and I guess my overall goal with Streetcraft is to just kind of give a inspirational message to people and kind of come at it with a solutions-oriented approach, because I think a lot of content doesn't always necessarily do that, and I think I wanted to take more of a fresh take on it and look at things as to how we can fix them, how we can improve them, and just take a more inspirational approach.
So yeah, no, I appreciate it about your videos because, as you say, a lot of the videos don't necessarily offer a solution. So I think that's really cool. You know, you see things like Strong Towns or other channels out there, and they do talk about like this is what we would love to see. But you're taking it a step further and actually saying like, no, like we could actually do this, and this is how. And I love the way that you sort of draw it out. So
like it feels like tangible solutions, especially in the United States, like seeing especially like your suburbs video. It's like these are things that could actually occur and be done in the United States versus some other places. Obviously, there are also some folks in the YouTube space who are like the North America is unsalvageable, all of this sort of stuff. You know, not naming names or anything. And I enjoy a lot of their content too, but it's for so many people in North America to have channels that are emphasizing here are the things we can do to make our communities better is a big focus. Is that something we can kind of expect more of?
Yeah, I think it's all going to be focused on solutions, and it's going to be somewhat realistic, I guess. I always want to take a realistic approach. Like the suburbs video you said, I got a lot of comments that were like, this is just terrible. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't tear it all down and build an entire public transit network from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, we can't tear everything down and build a public transit network from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one thing I really want to do is to take more of a realistic approach and things that can truly be done because it's easy to say, let's do this and this and this, but obviously it's not easy to actually do all of this magical wish list things that a lot of people want to do. Like myself included, like it would be cool to just wave a magic wand and have all these things done, but at the end of the day, it's just not realistic. So I want to take an approach that comes at it where it's like, okay, so how are we going to do small things that'll actually make a difference? And they might not be the end goal, they might not be the final solution, but you know, if we can save lives or if we can make more convenience or if we can just make a better community with little things, even if it's not the perfect solution, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be done still. So how can we take one step at a time towards a better future? Because you know, you just can't build an entire world differently overnight. So
I'm actually curious. So, all right, you go through the effort of making the videos, and you make really good points on how we can fix these intersections. Are you submitting those videos to any of the local groups? Have you talked to anybody in these locations and the planning departments yet, and kind of shown them like, hey, I think this is a good idea, and look, a lot of people agree with me on YouTube. Have you considered it? Have you had any of those conversations, or do you plan to?
some kind of. I've submitted ideas for sure to like State Department of Transportations, and they usually don't like to listen very much. So you usually don't have too much success when you go straight to them. Um, but I have worked with, like I'm working right now, actually. I just posted a short form video on Instagram and TikTok about a street in Chattanooga, and they're actually redesigning a street right now. The city is. And so the video that I have is I worked with an advocacy group there, and they're actually kind of rooting for one of the options that the city put out, and it kind of correlates with the design that I put out. So that one's like very real life involved. People can get involved, they can give feedback and stuff like that. Some of it's much more theoretical, and doesn't get heard much. But
That's very cool though, that
getting the
like,
ideas out there is definitely a priority though. And just, once people can get the ideas in their mind, then it's like, and people, especially if people can like see the idea and think, this might actually work here, or
mhm.
I never thought about it that way. It opens the minds of people and just kind of sparks new ideas for everyone.
No, absolutely. That's so cool. That's great. Number one, you're like kind of working with these different advocacy groups and whatnot, and like being able to see some of what you're making work at some sort of level to try to help different causes. I can tell you for sure that obviously there's no shortage of intersections and roadway designs that you could kind of look at. I know we're both based in Austin, Texas, and we've got more than a couple intersections and roads here right now. The big controversial one is they're redoing I-35 right through the center of downtown. And oh yes, yeah. We'll make sure the link to the ReThink 35 Group's donation fund for the lawsuit that they're currently working on is included below. But
and you know what I love about the I-35 project is that TxDOT does a similar video where they put out this sort of rendering of what the roadway is going to look like, kind of similar to what you've done on your channel, except in their renderings, there's still traffic jams happening on the roadway the whole time. So,
but at least going to make it better.
They need a better video editor.
The induced demand that they know is going to happen.
Right.
Yes. Yep. I'm curious, how did you kind of get into this? Like, are you someone who has studied this or are studying this sort of thing? Like, how did you kind of go into the street design, urbanism, public transportation rabbit hole, if you will? What was your like gateway?
So my work background, I've worked in video production for many years. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of just always a natural part of this. Mm-hmm. And I actually worked in urban planning for a little bit too in the governmental sector. So I got to see a lot of the ins and outs of like how things get done. And I think that might have been some of my realism aspect, because I'm like, okay, it's, in the real life, it's not that easy to get things done, especially just for like a local government to try to do a lot of things. So I kind of saw the process, how it works in reality. And it just opened my eyes to the whole world of urbanism and transportation design. And I've always kind of had an interest in it. And I think that kind of sparked it a little bit more. And then over the years, I've gotten involved in local community advocacy groups. And that kind of has just been a thing in the back of my life. And it's been an interest and a passion. And then this past year, I kind of thought like, hey, how can I combine my passion for video and my passion for urbanism, and what kind of message can I send to people? So that is how Streetcraft was born, and now I'm going with it and seeing where it takes me.
We're gonna jump right back into everything in a second here, but if you have not liked this video, please consider doing so. If you haven't left a comment, please do so. It also helps us out in the algorithm, and we actually read them all. We wanna see your feedback. Do that. If you're not subscribed, consider doing that as well.
And the ratings are not just for YouTube. Make sure that you're going to your favorite podcast platform, giving us a good rating, giving us a comment, and don't forget to share this with all of your friends. No, it's really awesome. I was hoping I'd hear something in there along the lines of kind of where mine and Lewis's inspiration came from as kids playing things like SimCity or City Skylines. I don't know if
I love City Skylines.
I keep trying to tell Lewis we're gonna start a City Skylines channel separate from this and just call it like Transit Town. Just make videos, passing it back and forth.
I actually had when I was thinking about how I wanted to kind of do videos, I was like, maybe I'll do like a City Skylines channel. I feel like that'd be interesting. There's a lot of them already, but maybe eventually there'll be like Streetcraft City Skylines edition.
That would be if you want that, folks who are watching, let us know in the comments. We can see Noah's Streetcraft City Skylines. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Have either of you done City Skylines 2 yet?
That's hilarious. I was gonna ask if you had any hot takes on City Skylines 2. So
I have not played it yet.
I have been playing it. Chris, for the most part, has not, but I have like mixed feelings still. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. There are definitely still issues with the game. I see the potential, I would say. If you are still playing City Skylines 1, I would hold off, but know that City Skylines 2 will get there. but I think you'll have more fun maybe sticking with the first one for at least a little bit longer.
I'm not ready to give up my old projects yet, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm staying on City Skylines 1.
Yeah.
My issue is I have a Mac and they don't have a Mac version out, and I don't have like
Right.
the parallels installed. So I'm
Mm.
like, well, I guess I have no choice unless I decide to buy a gaming PC, which maybe eventually I will.
Getting back on track a little bit here, I'm curious, do you have any it can be a childhood story, it can be something more recent, we've been trying to ask folks fun kind of transit related stories. It doesn't necessarily have to be public transit, but some sort of fun transit story that kind of sticks out to you.
Let me think. I have one from this past year. It's not necessarily fun, but it is a transit story. So I was in Europe this spring in Scandinavia, and I'd gone to Stockholm, and they have a direct high-speed rail that connects their airport to their city center. And their airport's pretty far out of town. So I don't remember exactly how far it is, but I know the train takes about 30-ish minutes, I want to say. I might be wrong on that. But regardless, I know it's really quick for how far the distance is. It might be like 30 miles and it takes shorter or something like that.
Mhm.
And then I'd gotten back, and 1 week later, I went to Chicago, and I wanted to take the train from the airport to downtown. And like the night and day of the transit system within that short amount of time, I was like, wow, this is very different. So I got on the train, and I don't know if you've been on Chicago's trains, but they're not always the nicest. And
I have not personally, but yeah.
and we got about halfway through the route to get to downtown, and they're like, okay, the train stops here, and everyone has to get off, and we'll have a bus that brings you to the next train station where you can get back on and you can continue your route downtown. So everyone got off the train, and they have like two buses waiting there. And of course, they fill up immediately because the bus does not hold the same amount of people.
Goes to train.
So everyone's just standing there like waiting for buses, and finally we get on a bus. The bus gets stuck in traffic, and we're just like sitting on this bus, not even moving. I'm like, I probably could have walked downtown faster at this point.
Yeah,
Because it's crazy.
unfortunately, that feels like a story that so many people probably have, like some kind of funny story. A lot of the times it is some sort of like not ideal situation that happens with people. And it's tricky because like
Yeah.
in this space that we're in now, where it's, name your reason, whether it be traffic, whether it be climate change, some, growing cities, growing populations, like public transit is going to be such an important factor moving forward. And a lot of people right now, are being talked into trying it for the first time in a lot of cases. And if that first experience is anything like what you described, or like some of what we've, heard from other people we've spoken with on the podcast, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of positive experiences too. And like a lot of the times it works well enough. But if it's just, we're not at a point in the United States yet, unfortunately, where there's enough focus, enough money, enough resources going towards these things, because if the same effort was put into public transportation as car infrastructure, like that would never happen. And it's a state of affairs that like hopefully will change, and tides feel like they might be turning in the right direction. But at least in the meantime, we can be trying to take some solutions like you have talked about in a lot of your videos to try to improve things on the margins in the places that, might not have a train line, like you said, kind of running right through and starting from scratch. But it's kind of needs to be like an all approaches happening at once if we're ever going to get anywhere. Yeah.
It is tricky because I feel like what you described is like such an accurate thing around the US, is that there's kind of a threshold of like how good public transportation has to be before people will consider it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the level is here for people, like it has to be this nice for people to ride it, and it's here, it doesn't matter really how many incremental moments you do there.
Mm-hmm.
Until it gets to a certain point, some people just aren't going to use it. And it's like a tough thing because you look at these little things that you might do and you're like, oh, well, we improved the public transit and no one's taking it still.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, because you didn't improve it quite enough yet. Like if it's still going to be a lot longer to get places, or if it's going to just be a not nice experience for people, they're not going to be incentivized to take it until it reaches a certain point where it's either time-wise incentivized, or it's just a nicer experience than driving, or a combination of both maybe. So it's like, it's one of those things that's kind of a challenge of when we build infrastructure that's transit related, and how we can look at it of like, okay, I promise it's gonna get it's like, and people will ride it. It just has to get to a certain point.
Right. It's like the classic like chicken or the egg situation. It happens so often with I see it with like bike infrastructure a ton. I ride my bike a ton. And the amount of people I see on I shouldn't waste my time here, but the amount of people I see on Twitter or other places who will like take pictures of empty bike lanes and be like the city's wasting money building these bike lanes and nobody even uses them, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, like it's because that bike lane is part of a larger network that's being built out over time. And right now it connects you from nowhere to nowhere. But in a couple of years, when they get to the next street that connects it over, like that will be a key connection. And, unfortunately, people look at it and be like, well, no one's using it, so maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should remove this pilot project that we're testing here. Maybe we should consider, just painting lanes instead of having them be protected. And then you end up with a watered down system. And, sure, it might mileage wise be larger, but no one feels comfortable using it. And then we're all scratching our heads being like, why is nobody using this? Yeah. It's frustrating.
Bike infrastructure, I think, is probably even more relevant when it comes to kind of an all or nothing approach. It's kind of like if you're putting together a puzzle and you have all of these pieces that are just in place, like people are going to look at it and be like, well, it's not a complete puzzle. Like I don't want it. It's useless. Like it's just a bunch of random pieces. And so it's like once you get a full complete picture, then it's like, oh, well, there you go. And now it's actually usable for people. And all of these pieces that you spent time investing in and putting in place, once it's part of a full network and it actually makes a real viable transportation option for people, then it's like now you have an option that people can use.
I don't know. Who doesn't like problem solving on their commute when the bike lane ends and you have to figure out where to go, I like something that you said earlier about like making these incremental changes, and how like that's not really going to sell people if you're not, getting the service to a certain level. I'm a big fan of the War on Cars podcast, and in some of their early episodes, they talk about, people riding the bus and how like the bus just isn't sexy, and like how do you make the bus sexy to get people to ride it. And they were saying that, some of the newer buses, they come with phone chargers and little plugins, and so you can have this sort of relaxing experience on the bus. But then they also call out, if you're riding a bus and you have time to charge your phone or to like get on your laptop and work between your destinations, the bus is not working for you. Like you should not have that much time on public transit. So yeah, you can make these incremental changes, but we have to do something drastically better to convince more people. And I like that you called that out.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I guess one last question for me, and then Chris, if you have any others. I mean, I've been anxiously awaiting a new YouTube video. I know that those, so I also work in video production, although the videos that I have put on YouTube are nowhere near as beautiful as the ones that you have made. So again, very kudos. Like you must have spent hours and hours and hours on all of those. So at least from me, and I'm sure from so many other people, when I read the comments on when I saw your videos the first time, the effort is definitely not gone unnoticed. But when can we expect some new Streetcraft content coming on YouTube?
Soon. Very, very soon. Hopefully by the end of this week.
Oh, okay.
I still have to hear back from a few people about a few things, but it's pretty much done on my end. It's just kind of getting all of the final things tied together, and
nice.
Yeah, well, soon.
Awesome. Well, Noah, thanks again so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. If for whatever reason you've heard of us and not Noah, you should go ahead and subscribe to Streetcraft as well. And we'll keep an eye on what you put out over the next couple of weeks and months. And hopefully this is just the beginning of Streetcraft. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
yeah, I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go.